at the moment, Britain has one of the most expensive legal aid systems in the world at £2 billion per year. After the reductions have gone through, we will still have one of the most generous legal aid systems in the world at £1.5 billion a year. So I defy anyone to say that there are going to be problems in terms of access to justice when we're spending £1.5 billion, which is more than almost every other country in the world.
The lawyer I am interviewing today is a Member of Parliament and Minister for the Courts and Legal Aid. He is a member of the Conservative Party and has held various local, regional and national posts within the party, including Vice Chairman between 2001 and 2005. He was the Shadow Deputy Leader of the House of Commons between 2006 and 2010 and the Government Whip between 2010 and 2012. He was first elected as a Member of Parliament for North West Cambridgeshire in May 2005 and re-elected in 2010. Before entering politics, he graduated from Brunel University and qualified as a solicitor. He worked in the City and the West End of London as well as a stint in Hong Kong. He has been described as a future Conservative Party leader. His ministerial responsibilities cover legal aid, courts, tribunal, as well as administrative justice and judicial policy, including diversity. The lawyer I'm interviewing today is Shailesh Vara MP. Shailesh, welcome to the BLD interviews and thank you for giving the time.
My pleasure.
Shailesh, what was your first job?
My first job was quite dull. It was actually working in a shop as an assistant, and most of it was just stacking some shelves. It was a hardware shop in Aylesbury.
Okay.
And I just did it for a few days, and after I'd done it, I think about 4 or 5 days, then they let me loose on the till to make sure that I could deal with the customers. But it was for a few days, but an experience into the big wide world.
Okay, so from stacking the shelves, you decided to become a lawyer. Why? So what made you make that decision?
I always wanted to be a lawyer for the simple reason that it was a means by which I thought I could do something that I enjoyed, but also in my own small way try and help people, because a lawyer's job is actually, of course there are various disciplines, but one of the jobs of a lawyer is to speak up for people who otherwise wouldn't be able to speak up for themselves. Okay. And so that's why I entered law. Okay,
so and I know you did a lot more commercial work.
I did. I did commercial work, but and that was sort of deal making. But nevertheless, the law was a stepping stone to politics, and the law itself. There are some aspects that even if you are a lawyer outside, the fact that you're a lawyer gives you access to speaking up for communities and people and so on and so forth.
So really, you probably answered part of my next question, is why from law into politics?
It's a sort of gradual process in a sense. If you're interested in politics, then the law is a good platform. As a lawyer, you implement the law, and then as a politician, you make the law.
So the attraction really is that, no, I can make the law, as opposed to just implementing the law.
Well, yes, and have a say in, if you really care about making a difference, and I always have cared. I wanted to do something that would basically help people, and rather than be an implementer, I thought I'd be somebody who would be an instigator. Right. And if you're in Parliament, then you can actually help shape the law, which will eventually be carried out and implemented by lawyers and mainstream society.
So great, you've seen both sides. Right, as a minister, what is a typical day like?
Gosh, there is no typical day. I can come in and my diary will say I've got to have various meetings, but then suddenly a story breaks. It may be to something to do with my own department, one of my own responsibilities, and then suddenly there are issues in dealing with the media, or suddenly there may be emergency meetings, and that may just be a typical day, but then there may be other days when it is purely media focused.
When you say media focused, what do you mean?
For example, when the barristers went on strike in January, I had a number of interviews lined up, and they started off at 6:40 in the morning in the television studio, and it was literally from one interview after another, and they finished at about 5:30, by which time I'd done about 20 interviews. So that was a day which was focused on one issue. Whereas there are other days where it's meetings, and it could start off with doing a radio interview in the morning, with meetings, with a lunch somewhere, or a dinner where I may be speaking. So it really does vary.
Right, so there's no typical day. At the end of that, you still have your red boxes to take home.
Yes.
You love your red boxes, do you?
Well, you have to. It goes with the job. So
there was a slight groan there.
Well, let's just say that some of the boxes can be heavier than I would like them to be, but it's part of the job, and you have to do them, and you have to stay on top of what your brief is.
Okay. I mean, my next question really is really because of your ministerial post. You wear two of your hats is on legal aid. So everybody in this country is aware about the deep cut, not just recently, in many years actually, and it's very well documented that barristers are angry, solicitors are very angry too, there have been strikes, judges are completely inundated with litigants in person that really is clogging up the legal system. On top of that, there's a huge case, a couple of weeks ago where a judge said in a huge complex fraud trial that they could not be properly represented, and the case, really, what is going on, and what is the government doing about legal aid, access to justice, really?
Well, can I just give the background here? Is that at the moment Britain has one of the most expensive legal aid systems in the world at £2 billion per year. After the reductions have gone through, we will still have one of the most generous legal aid systems in the world at £1.5 billion a year. So I defy anyone to say that there are going to be problems in terms of access to justice when we're spending £1.5 billion, which is more than almost every other country in the world. As far as the reductions are concerned, I'm afraid they are a necessity. If you look at the statistics, recorded crime since 1996 has gone down by 50%. So in terms of criminal...
is that to do with cuts, or is not really?
No, this is just crime prevention,
Sure.
and people are basically reporting fewer crimes. So if you are a barrister and a criminal barrister, and you find that since 1996 to now, the type of work you do has gone down by 50%, then that's an issue. So in that time, whilst crime has gone down, nevertheless, the number of lawyers who are chasing that work has increased. The other thing, as far as barristers are concerned, is that, of course, unlike before, solicitors can now go into court and do advocacy work. So again, this is solicitors who are doing work that had previously been reserved for the bar. We also have 300 what are called alternative business structures, whereby you've got, for example, Tesco, if they wish to set up a legal department, they can. So the legal sector is changing, and it's changing hugely. And that is one of the things that people need to take into account. The other thing to bear in mind is that resorting to the law is not always the best solution.
Some will well say you've made very fair points, but the issue of, let's say, criminal legal aid is, well, crime may well be falling, but people are still represented in some very serious cases. Some in the fraud trials I've just cited to you. In family matters, it's been really, really terrible for children, and there's been so many cases like that, and the judges are showing concerns. At the end of the day, they're very poor. Originally for whom legal aid was designed to protect, actually some are having to travel, hundreds of miles to find a solicitor to represent them because of the cut, and some firms are just shut down because it's not profitable. So those are the concerns of those ordinary people. What are you going to do to address those concerns of those people?
Well, I'm not sure I agree with you in every way. I mean, and I think even you would agree that what you've said has been some seriously broad generalizations in the broadest possible sense.
Some may disagree.
But that's, I'll allow you to exercise journalistic license there. But no, I'm confident that with a budget of £1.5 billion, there is plenty of money there to ensure that those people who qualify will be able to get the quality lawyers that we have, and for which we are world famous.
Right. What do you say then, specifically to the judges who say, hang on a minute, there's so many people now who are litigants in person, and actually, because when I was in practice, when the other person is a litigant person, you're really sometimes at a disadvantage as an advocate, and the judges are bending backwards to make sure there is, there is equality in a way, and and they're just bending backwards, clogging the system, costing more money actually. What do you say to that?
Well, what I say is that there have always been litigants in person,
Yes,
even
yeah,
before
there's
the
no question,
reductions
yeah.
came in. Secondly, certainly as a solicitor, it was the duty of a solicitor. The Code of Conduct says that where you are dealing on the other side with somebody who's not represented by a lawyer, you have to do your utmost to make sure that they are assisted as best as possible.
They are, yeah.
So what the judges are doing is only what their professional conduct allows them to do, and says that they must do. As far as the number of cases coming into court are concerned, well, as I say, there is you have to bear in mind that 50% of crime has gone down, so you've got a lot of cases that would otherwise have turned up in court that aren't there.
I think we leave it there. We agree to disagree, so to say. The other hat you wear of your portfolio is diversity. So what do you consider to be greatest really challenge on in terms of issues and challenges in the legal profession today? In respect of diversity, what do you consider?
I think diversity
what is the government doing about that?
I think diversity is very important, and this is an issue that the Prime Minister has made absolutely clear is important, and indeed Lord Chief Justice Lord Thomas has made this a priority of his as well. I think when we talk of diversity, we should recognise what exactly we're talking about. I mean, diversity is ensuring that there are more women who have access to the law and the positions they're in, as well as people from minority backgrounds, disabled people, as well as people from a variety of social backgrounds.
Absolutely.
The government has taken this very seriously. We introduced last year measures to, for example, the equal merits criteria, which will be coming to force later on this month.
Yeah.
And basically what that is that if you have two candidates and both are absolutely equal in every way, then you can take into account the protected characteristics element for if they're a woman or somebody from a minority community. But let me emphasize that this is where there is equality in terms of ability. We are not sort of compensating for a lack of ability. So people are coming through now, through the system, who are able, bright, and good enough for the job. So we've introduced this measure. We've also seen the introduction of salaried part-time working in the courts, and that clearly is something that I suspect will appeal to women. Absolutely. And we're not stopping there. In my regular meetings with the Lord Chief Justice, Lord Thomas, this is at the top of our agenda, and we are having meetings, myself certainly, with lawyers, both from the Law Society as well as the judiciary, disabled lawyers, those from minority communities, with a view to seeing what are the issues that are affecting them, what are the problems. For example, one of the problems that is coming out is that sometimes people who would otherwise make suitable QCs are applying just a little bit early. And what they need is a bit more experience. And if somebody told them, just hold fire for a little bit, or for example, there is, I've heard of instances where people take the view that they need to have somebody really eminent as a referee, regardless of the fact that the eminent person may not know them as well as somebody who's more junior. And it's little things like that.
Very, very sort of impressive, doesn't it?
It may be impressive, but then that person can't
happen.
actually write down a lot of the details that are required in terms of the ability of that individual. And also we're trying to break down this image of Oxbridge, male, white preserve of that community. So we recognise some of the problems. There are other issues out there. We are talking with the relevant people, and we are taking this very, very seriously. And I would like to see that there is greater diversity, both in terms of judiciary and indeed in the solicitor's profession and more generally.
Can I just pick up one point on equality? How can you possibly, I mean, hands aren't equal, eyes are different, ears are different size. How could one possibly measure that candidates are equal in any shape or form? Isn't the reality would be that, okay, they look roughly the same, on paper and in interviews, but actually we don't have so many women, so we don't have so many ethnic minorities or disabled people or those, LGBT, whatever the the heading is. Isn't that really the reality of it? Something you will say?
I mean, this is a situation which I'm not expecting is going to be used on a regular basis.
No.
This is where you have a situation where you have two outstanding and excellent candidates who fit all the criteria, but then there has to be some determining factor. And in the absence of the equal merits provision, whoever the employer is would think of some other criteria to distinguish between one and another. What we are saying is that this should be the criteria.
Right. So really, nobody can say for sure always totally equal, but it has to be rough and ready, I suppose. That's my point.
Well, I'm sure for those people who are employing people, that they will look at two CVs and say, these are two outstanding candidates, it's a much for muchness. So, and we'll have to see how it works out. But it really is intended for that small number of cases where you really have a much for muchness between two candidates.
Okay, great. I'm just going to get back to the, shall we say, more relaxing questions. What was the best and the worst career advice you were given?
The best advice I was given was don't give up on whatever you want to achieve, because you can do it and you should aim for it. The worst advice I was given was remember your background and remember that you can't always achieve what you want to achieve.
What does that mean, remember your background?
Well, I'm the son of immigrants. My father was a carpenter, and I didn't.
So for that reason, don't think above your station.
Well, I mean, but be modest in your ambitions.
Right.
And I don't think it was meant unkindly. It was just a sort of reflection of, from where you're coming, you should have slightly more modest ambitions than perhaps somebody else who would have had a different background.
You obviously didn't listen.
I obviously didn't. No.
What is the best career advice you would give to others? Let's say youngsters, professionals coming through the ranks.
My advice to them would be have your dreams, have your ambitions, be prepared to put in the relevant work, and persevere. And if it doesn't work out the first time, then remember many people who've achieved great things in their lives in a variety of professions. Things didn't always work out for them the first time round. No. So hang on in there and persevere.
So try again. What would you consider to be your professional high point?
I'm a justice minister. It doesn't get much better if you enter the law and then to find yourself being a justice minister. I'm very happy with the job I've got.
Yes. Okay. So far, so great. You said great. Who is the person you most admire, dead or alive, and why?
My father, and bless him, he's still with us. He's 89, and my father, he lost his own father when he was 3 years old in India, and as a young man, he went to East Africa to try and better himself, and he had no one but himself and a determination to do well, and he did. He worked well, went to Kenya and stayed in Kenya and Uganda, and eventually came to this country in the early 60s at a time when people were simply saying that don't go there, it's a very cold country, and you won't be able to get your own types of foods and whatever and so on. But he came here and worked hard, ensured that there was a roof over the heads of his family, and gave us an education, and has always supported me along with my mother. Yes.
So he's your hero.
He's my hero.
What are you most passionate or happiest, shall we say, about? What would you say?
I'm happy doing the job I'm doing. I'm happy as a Member of Parliament, because the reason why I entered Parliament, and indeed it's a privilege to be a minister, is to be able to do things to make a difference, to hopefully play my small role in bettering the lives of mainstream society. And it is comforting. I mean, as a constituency MP, I remember one occasion when I had a woman who came to one of my surgeries. She had 2 disabled children, and one of them was having difficulty getting access to a particular school, which was clearly well suited for that child and his needs. But the local authority were being difficult, and I then looked at all the criteria for that particular school. This child fitted that criteria, and I wrote off and championed her cause, and she managed to get the child in. And it's things like
So
that.
for you, politics is about making a difference. But if you're to ask ordinary people on the street, they're quite like, oh, politicians. Something on Radio 4 this morning, I heard, I don't know whether they heard it, about 229 description of politicians. About 7 was positive. So that's pretty awful, I think. So for you, though, it's still about making that difference.
It is. I mean, politicians have always had a bad name, but for me, it is a difference.
Now we know what you're passionate about. What about your dislikes?
I don't have a lot of dislikes, but you know, I
Nothing that gets you, oh, can't stand that. Seriously.
I'm not very keen on negativity. I'm a person who believes in getting things done, and if somebody simply just gives up at the first hurdle, my view is that if you don't succeed first time around, then try again, and if there isn't a direct route, then see if there's another route, rather than simply coming up to an obstacle and saying, that's it, can't do it, sit down, tools down, or whatever, and so on. So negativity is something that I dislike, but on the whole, I can put up with a lot.
Do you have any professional regrets?
No.
Any more professional you would love to achieve?
I'm delighted to be a Justice Minister, and the portfolio I've got can be challenging at times, legal aid for example, but I've also got other issues. I'm in charge of the court structure, matters to do with European Union that concern the Ministry of Justice, the legal sector, the regulation of legal sector, the bar, law society and all that. As well as a few other things, and the other thing I'm looking forward to very much is the Global Law Summit, which is a major one-off event that we're going to be having next February to mark the 800th anniversary of Magna Carta, and I'm helping to get that going, and I hope you'll be able to come along to it, along with many of your
if I'm invited, I'll be delighted to attend.
Well, it's going to be the event you've got to go to if you've got anything to do with law.
You've got to go to, please. So no more mountains to climb.
Gosh, at the moment I'm very happy.
You're
Thank
happy
you very
where
much.
you are.
But there are a lot of mountains in the world out there.
So one final question. If you could rule the world for a day, what would you change or do?
I would like to try and do something to stop all the wars that we've got between nations and within nations, the civil wars. I'd like to try and get people to understand and have better respect for their fellow man.
What are you going to do? Are you going to
I'm not sure. I'd have 24 hours, so
yes,
you know, I mean, just ask that question.
Think about it.
So at least I know what I want to do. Then I've got 24 hours to do it, and I'd also like to make sure that every person has some food, and you know, we need to get our act sorted better to make sure that no one goes hungry in the 21st century. And I think those two, if I could go some way to achieving those two ambitions in 24 hours, I'd like to think that the world would be a lot better.
Shailesh Vara, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.